This is Between the Brackets, a MediaWiki podcast, episode 37, June 25th, 2019. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren. My guest for this episode is Airy Magnien, Airy Magnien, if you prefer, who is the digital modeling leader at the UIC, which stands for Union Internationale des Chemins de Fer, or as it's known in English, the International Union of Railways. Airy is in charge of a project called Ontorail.
Yes.
Okay, great. Airy is in charge of a project called Ontorail, currently viewable at ontorail.org, which aims to create a shared body of knowledge about railways using MediaWiki. I first met Airy at the EMWCon, or Enterprise MediaWiki Conference in California back in April, and now I'm pleased to say that he is organizing the upcoming SMWCon, or Semantic MediaWiki Conference, which will be held in September in Paris at the UIC office. So this episode also doubles as a promotion for the upcoming SMWCon, which will be about 3 months from now. So Airy, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So I said the UIC office is in Paris, but where do you live?
Well, in Lille, which is 250 kilometers north of Paris. It's the fourth largest city in France. Doesn't mean that it is internationally wide known. And I, happen to commute nearly every day between Paris and Lille to accomplish my duties.
Wow, okay. Do you take the train there?
What's your guess? Huh? I'm a railman. I'm supposed to commute by car. Certainly not the case. Yes, definitely with a high-speed train. So the train itself, the train ride itself is a no-brainer. It's just 1 hour, and there are trains every half an hour in each direction. But the problem is rather Paris transport and the fact that when you have a chain with different legs, 3 different legs in each sense, the likelihood that something will happen by the end of the day is close to 1. I
see. Okay. But the fact that it takes an hour or less for 250 kilometers, if I can do my conversion correctly, that's pretty amazing, I think.
300 kilometers per hour, and good luck with the conversion to imperial units.
I'm guessing it's something like 200 miles an hour, which is quite fast.
Yes, close to it.
I just want to talk a little bit about your career before you got involved with railway stuff. According to your bio, you started off your career with the French cavalry. Now, cavalry means troops riding horses, but I'm guessing there were no horses there, though I could be wrong.
There were horses, only for leisure. Anyway, I'm not qualified. When we say cavalry, I think it's the same more or less in the U.S. It's main battle tanks, actually.
I see. So what were you doing there?
My military service, my military duties for 1 year, like every French guy. At the time, because 30 years ago, the compulsory military service was abolished. Okay. Still, I have some fond memories from that time, and also because there was nothing really wrong happening. I was not called for a duty abroad to, in Serbia, whatever. So it was a rather peaceful way to accomplish one's military service.
Yeah, great. I think pretty soon after that, you got into the trains business, if I can call it that. How did you end up doing that? Well,
that's a bit by chance, not completely. In fact, I studied physics and engineering sciences before. I was quite attracted already by IT and information technology, even though these were the hard times with the punch cards,
Right.
And our first courses in programming were using Fortran 4. So this is a bit a thing of the past, not completely, in scientific applications. But at the time, I was already attracted by other languages, at that time PL1, because there was a possibility to handle not just numbers, not just do number crunching, but also to handle text. And by the way, my first project was something about text processing, text analysis, lexical analysis, etc. Something you could do with PL1, something that nowadays is a piece of cake, of course, with Python, all the libraries, but at the time it was a bit, let's say, advanced. But I had to choose, and in fact, my musical taste pushed me towards acoustics, and that was certainly not a good career choice. If you look at the evolution of the past 40 years, I think the acousticians never went billionaires, and some IT guys went billionaires. So I think, well, economically, that was not the right choice. But I had fun definitely with acoustics. Was also useful every now and then with the railways, and I joined the railways essentially to win my bread because, well, at some point you have to be economically dependent, of course.
Yeah, sure. If I can summarize your career from just having seen I guess a CV of sorts, it looks like you've basically been in the railway industry since the mid '80s, but working your way up the ladder from consulting on specific railway projects in different countries to helping to supervise the railway system throughout France to now helping to supervise the railway system around the world. Is that accurate?
Worse than that. I've seen railways for many sides, I would say, including the regulatory part. I've started since I came from the army with what I knew best. It is maintaining rolling stock, in that case not the main battle tanks but diesel locs, and getting along with not platoons but maintenance crews. So that was a start, essentially diesel engines, and then migrating from the maintenance to the rebuilding of diesel engines, diesel locomotives, then moving to rolling stock purchase, and then high-speed trains. And high-speed trains at the time, early 90s, were good export stuff, or at least there were good prospects, including the US, by the way, also in Korea and in Taiwan. And by the way, in the 90s, I had the pleasure to contribute to the Korean high-speed train system.
Oh, wow.
With the engineering contracts. At the time as a consultant, I was managing a fair share of engineering contracts for the purpose of already knowledge transfer. At the time it was called, how do you call that? Technology transfer, because 100% technology transfer was on the agenda. But go figure, at the time we did that only with PDFs and PowerPoints. I think nowadays, if we would have to restart that, we would definitely use something else. And guess what? Okay, but indeed, I drifted towards other things like system engineering, definitely the formalization of knowledge, and even got a slightly economic virus because even in Europe, even in old Europe, not just in the UK, sometimes we're a bit concerned about economics.
Sure. I think there was some irony or sarcasm there, if I can detect it.
Yeah.
Right. So, gosh. Well, you mentioned a lot of things. So yeah. I mean, I guess from an IT perspective, not only have you been, seen all the different aspects of the railway industry, but you've also seen a lot of different aspects of IT and communications technology, and that kind of thing. How best to organize information and communicate that information.
Yes, I would say I always had some kind of nostalgia concerning not doing IT as a profession, because it's definitely something sexy. And however, I always had IT tools in my toolbox, especially as a consultant, because, one of my fads would be to analyze a problem. And then usually my Korean especially, and also Taiwanese customers would say, but I understand the problem now, but would you have an IT solution to it? So very often crafting a little piece of local application, doing something clever, was on the agenda. Did it a couple of times, for instance, analyzing the climatic evolution in Taiwan, because they were afraid that with the global warming, maybe the air conditioning systems on board would not cope with the evolution. Analyze the climate evolution was one thing. Analyze the noise signature of the competing Shinkansen products and recreating them. All things that you can easily do or pretty well do with IT environments. At that time, I was using Delphi or Delphi, if you pronounce it the American way, the stuff from Borland, you remember?
Yes,
and that led me to learn the hard way object-oriented programming with Turbo Pascal 6 first and Delphi 3. And since I was, basically a Delphi fan, also you remember Pascal was a language invented by certain Niklaus Wirth in Switzerland.
Sure.
I followed their evolution, and their evolution was quite interesting because it led to integrating into the development environments, integrating modeling tools, and in that case, a full-fledged UML modeling tool that was part of the Delphi Architect version, including an ORM system, object relation mapping, and data-aware components. This was quite advanced technology at the time, and by the way, it's no longer on the market right now for some probably silly reason, but okay, that's a fact of life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Of course, I guess we're going to get into MediaWiki stuff, but the whole object relational mapping to some extent describes the kind of thing that we're involved with templates and page forms and Semantic MediaWiki and all of that. But definitely,
yes,
it's been around for a long time. Yeah.
This is one aspect, and also the other aspect is, of course, I drifted into ontology stuff quite recently, but to some extent, you can represent ontologies using class diagrams. It works. You can extract ontologies from class diagrams. I would say the mindset is a bit similar. When you do a proper model, you already have a underlying ontology, even though it's not necessarily very well encoded and very well represented. But that was leading me to the path that ultimately resulted in saying maybe ontology was the right tool set to represent and share knowledge. And then I was facing a problem. And the problem is, how do I handle ontologies? And of course, I had a look at Protégé web version, for instance. Nice tool set to represent graphically the knowledge graphs, but something was missing. And then a colleague of mine from a research institute here in northern France, Mr. Mathieu Perrin, told me, Airy, you are going to love me or hate me, but you should have a look at Semantic MediaWiki.
Yeah.
And that was in November last year.
Oh, okay.
So first thing I did is install MediaWiki. That was a breeze. And then install the semantic extension, and it was a nightmare, but ultimately it was successful. Play with it. And I can say now it's June 2019, 6 months later, I can say that guy Mathieu Perrin, I do not hate him.
Wow, okay. I guess that means you love him.
In fact, I think he gave me probably the right direction. He is quite senior, has got a PhD in all these disciplines myself, myself. I'm only self-taught, definitely. But he certainly he knew about Semantic MediaWiki, and he certainly gave me the right direction, especially for industry-wide applications, something that we'd like to share with professionals from the different railway domains. So that was certainly the right clue he gave me, and now the adventure has started. Let's see how it finishes.
Yeah. So I want to talk about MediaWiki and ontologies and all that. But before we get to that, just to give people more of a context for this whole thing, you now work at the UIC, as I mentioned. What do they do?
Well, UIC has been founded in 1922 as an association, a professional association of railway companies. At the time, the companies were all state-owned and integrated companies, or most of them. The members are, however, worldwide, and for instance, in Chinese railways, Indian railways joined quite early, already before the Second World War. The purpose of this association was very much political. If you remember, we had the First World War ending up in the Versailles Treaty. And as an attempt to curb the economic power of Germany at the time and to reduce the influence of Germany, especially in the railway domain. And very characteristically, in 1918, when the railways companies from Alsace and Lorraine that were occupied by Germany since 1870. When these companies went back to France, they came with their German-inspired technology, their German locomotives, and something that was quite valuable. The Germans had standardized railways much more than everybody else, because Germany was extremely fragmented in the course of the 19th century. And in order to get to some economic efficiency, the numerous small state or principalities, how do you say that? Well, yes, exactly. There were so many small local states. At least they managed to have one powerful industry delivering according to standards that were shared really across Germany. And that made their products indeed quite attractive. So that was a danger, because there is a Japanese saying, if you submit to somebody's standards, you are giving up your power, basically. Huh. So the Allied, the anti-German, the French, the British, etc., considered it was probably wise to set up international railway standards that were not exactly German standards, although, of course, many of them were copied. But from 1920 plus, all those standards were rewritten in a coherent whole, published as so-called UIC leaflets. They are still called that way. UIC is not an officially recognized standardization body as ISO or IEC, for instance, or CEN and CENELEC in Europe, because the International Organization of Standards rests on national bodies that are then convened internationally. At the time, UIC was much more advanced in the sense that it was an international body from scratch, from beginning, not relying on national standardization bodies and trying to unify railways independently of borders. There are still many technical borders, unfortunately, but at least the initiative was in the right step in the right direction. And this is the main work of UIC until now. There are also traditionally the standards were dealing, of course, with mechanical parts, electrical parts when electrification came. Signaling, of course, quite a bit. It is only recently that UIC considered to also standardize other domains, soft domains. And maybe the most important initiative was in 2004, when UIC proposed to its members to create a single repository for the whole European timetabling system. And this allows to get to plan travels from A to B from any point in Europe to any other point across the whole set of more or less big railway companies in between, and having one unique source for or one unique interface for timetabling. For instance, if you look at the German timetabling system from the German National Railways, Deutsche Bahn, they will definitely provide the service across the whole of Europe. And this was an initiative resting on, I would say, rather conventional technologies, but very efficient ones. EDIFACT as a data exchange language. EDIFACT is a text-based format, quite compressed and quite terse, I would say, much more terse than XML, for instance. And at the time, 2004, that was the right thing, absolutely the right thing to use, and it's still being used right now and maintained. This was maybe the first standardization initiative, but not as a standard, rather as a product. And there were other initiatives, for instance, concerning absolute positioning systems, which is also of importance for surveying tasks with railways. And in 2016, UIC released a RailTopoModel, which is maybe the first instance of a class diagram trying to propose a universal structure for representing railway infrastructure, tracks, signaling, and the rest. And then, of course, we noticed we were working in the reverse order. First, people focus on data exchange formats because data exchange is, of course, the rage. And then they notice, well, in order for the formats to be compatible and not to have too complicated translation engines, it's good if all formats would rest on one unique model. And then you do the model and you notice, well, we got lots of classes inside there. They got funny names. We think we understand what's behind the name, but in fact, the understanding is completely different. And let me quote a very simple example. Yeah. Recently, we had a discussion going on with signalmen from China and from Europe, speaking some kind of continental English to understand each other. And then the discussion came about collision. It took 2 hours to notice that people were not understanding each other, because for the European signalman, collision means a following train hitting the train before him, or 2 trains having a nose-to-nose collision, for instance, on a single track, or a train coming from the side via turnout and hitting the flank of another train. So it is train against train. Whereas for the Chinese colleagues, collision would mean encroaching the gauge. That is, the rolling stock hitting some fixed part. That was, of course, a very obvious difference. So it took only 2 hours to understand, well, they were not talking about the same thing. Right. Now, especially the field of signaling, the signaling concepts, even the signaling philosophies, if I may say so, are quite different. And basically, there's a French school, can be found also abroad. There is a German school that can be found abroad, especially in German-speaking countries and Norway, etc. And then there is also a British school and a couple of others. And this is much more important because, especially in signaling, what you would dream of is getting the whole system acceptance rationalized, the test periods shortened, the verification streamlined. And if the confusion starts with the vocabulary, you have a problem. And also a big economic problem. Not really a safety problem, because in the end, the certification will be done and will do what it is intended for. But the cost of the certification, the time to get certified, right, is simply becoming unbearable. So this is where, from the modeling, we went into the ontology discussion with, of course, as you mentioned already, Semantic MediaWiki as probably a tool of choice. Not only because of ontologies, by the way, but that's another subject maybe we'll discuss immediately after.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, actually. That that there are those kinds of difficulties in communication. I mean, at a high level, what would an ideal solution be? I guess with spoken language, there's still those issues. I mean, how can people communicate in a way that they know that they're talking about the same things?
Well, the first step is establishing a dictionary.
Okay.
And this also was one of the standard products of UIC. It's called RailLexic right now. It's, of course, available on download or CD-ROM, etc. The RailLexic is a very rich dictionary. I guess there must be about 20,000 terms in there, maybe 20 languages also. The only problem is, generally speaking, you have lexical equivalences that are proposed. Of course, they are based on expert knowledge and expert discussions, but fundamentally, you will not get definitions in there. So if you're starting from scratch, you can only be sure of the meaning in another language if you are already sure of the meaning in your mother tongue, maybe. And what is mother tongue? Because there is linguistically there's German, and there is Austrian German, and there is Swiss German, and other flavors of German. And unfortunately, for especially signaling, it's exactly the same. You have German Eisenbahn German, and you have Austrian Eisenbahn German, etc., etc. So you have many nuances that go beyond. You have dialects, in fact. It's not just a matter of language as we understand it, generally speaking. People have dialects that reflect their technologies and the concepts behind their technologies. So this is a step that we have to overcome. And of course, then setting a dictionary so you can explain things by referring to other. Here we are already in the Wikipedia empire, I would say. So MediaWiki is certainly the tool of choice because also it allows to have full traceability and open up the contributions to maybe more just in a handful of specialists. So it is a very tempting path. But now this is probably not sufficient because for lots of applications we cannot be simply satisfied with having atomic definitions for hundreds of terms. The relationships between the terms is just as important. So when we say, for instance, that a signal protects a route, or a signal is a start of a route in terms of signaling, then you are connecting to important notions, and the protection also has a meaning. So here we drift definitely into ontologies, illustrating concepts and linking the concepts with each other. Of course, once you set up ontologies instead of just a dictionary, by the way, that needs an ontology just for coping with the language issues and the difference between lexical terms and lexical sense, depending on the context. So for that, there are already ontologies available, upper ontologies like Lemon, for instance, that has been proposed by the World Wide Web Consortium, and I think it's the best candidate. But then if you need to describe the railway system itself, you have to really create a railway system ontology. And this is, by the way, the purpose of the Ontorail.org project.
Yeah, okay. So just before we get into the MediaWiki and ontology stuff, I just want to clarify. So let's say that this dictionary and ontology exists and everyone agrees on it and so forth. How does that change communication? Does it still make sense to have, verbal communications? And if so, how would you use this ontology and dictionary to help clarify what you're talking about? Yeah.
Verbal communication is essential and will remain essential. I remember in 2002 approximately, some colleagues of mine inside another association on behalf of the European Commission were asked to set up a functional model of the railway system. And the purpose was to rationally and systematically solve the problems of lack of interoperability between different European railways. So they set up a simple model, based on simple grammar called SADT, and started to describe all the functions that connect, that ensure that passenger transport, from, for instance, a train preparation to the execution, the operation of trains, etc., plus the ticketing system, or whatever you need. And it appeared already that if you spread that kind of model across people who are knowledgeable, they will understand, even if there are no definitions. But as soon as you share with politicians, then you have to be a bit more pedagogic, do a bit popular science. I think, unfortunately in Europe, only the British are good at popular science and think it is a healthy exercise. In France, French have a certain reputation for being arrogant, and in France, you like to keep your knowledge for yourself because it allows you to be brilliant and shroud yourself in your own knowledge in order not to be too much questioned. And there are not so many good popular science writers in France. In other countries, it's variable. So doing some popular science is essential. It's not just about setting up a dictionary. It's really about sharing knowledge. It's absolutely essential. And the second thing is, when we did that model in 2002, we noticed there is an enormous amount of functions that are still carried out by people. So using verbal communication. So be very careful about that. We are not in a transport system that is fully automated.
Right.
It's quite complex. There are lots of interfaces, and many interfaces are human to human. So better be careful. By the way, the European Commission and especially the European Railway Agency are currently discussing whether it would make sense to have some language, some unique language, as the operation language across the whole of Europe. For the time being, it is only specified that if a driver crosses the border, is supposed to know the language of the neighboring country. And now there are people thinking, well, if everybody would talk Yiddish, it would be perfect.
Right.
Okay. When I say people thinking, I think Yiddish should be the lingua franca for
Yiddish.
railways.
Sorry, I thought you were saying English. Okay, yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Yiddish sounds
no,
good.
you said, see, I said Yiddish and you understood English because many people think English is the word language. Yes, that is obvious.
Okay, right.
Okay, maybe, okay, but that's definitely a different subject. I like to provocatively say it should be Yiddish for very good reasons, including historical ones. Now, back to the main subject.
Well, some people have described it as a universal language, but only for a specific subgroup, of course. Right.
Yes, but it should be universal and quite successful from that point of view. But back to now the main subject. Indeed, harmonizing the language and then the terms in one harmonized language could be useful. But of course, we need to go much further. And the idea is, especially one of the projects running now, not only with UNC but also with our external partners, namely BuildingSMART International and ULinks, is a problem to instate a BIM, building information modeling, for railways especially. Building information modeling is about exactly that is conveying data with context through automated means like WorldCat systems, files, object collections, JSON format, for instance, that will be self-describing. And that is, by the way, BIM level 3. That's what we're working on right now. And for that, you need definitely to establish models and to, even before that, establish ontologies to be sure about the meaning of what you are transmitting. And this is also economically quite important. Just figure out, building information modeling is an initiative that has been taken 25 years ago, 1994, BuildingSMART International at the time. They were called slightly differently. An initiative, in fact, an association founded by CAD specialists like Bentley and a couple of others, just in order to promote automated machine-to-machine data exchange. That was 25 years ago, and it took until 2018 for the railways to try and do the same, at least in Europe. So we are definitely backwards. But on the other hand, the opportunity is we start later, but the technology is much more mature. So we hope that the time to market that kind of solution will be shorter.
Yeah, shorter than 25 years, then another 25 years. Is that what you mean?
Yes, of course, the product, the industry foundation classes in the case of BuildingSMART, have evolved over time. People start with simple things and then complexify and complete the system, not describing the whole world in one step. And this is also true for railways. We're doing that step by step. And for instance, for the time being, we absolutely concentrate, I would say, on the technical layers, the lower business capability levels. That is networks, their components, and operations and maintenance. We don't deal for the time being with commercial and business issues in our modeling. That would be worth also considering later on. It's just really about running railways like you would be running a scale H0 railway. It's really the technical aspects that we're dealing with.
Yeah, okay. Wait, what was that? Scale H something?
H0 model railways, just to make an analogy. We're dealing with rolling stock, with infrastructure, with dispatching, and not considering the upper business levels.
Yeah, right. Yeah, business processes and stuff.
Yep.
But is the idea that this Ontorail website or project or whatever would, in theory, be the container for all of that data, all present and future ontology related information?
Well, that would sound preposterous, right?
I don't know. It sounds good.
Okay. On the other hand, it's not, because initially, to be honest, when we started RailTopoModel, that is the UML description of how to structure infrastructure railway information, we were maybe a bit overambitious and thinking that, well, we start describing the topology, the positioning, location, etc., and then by and by we'll introduce different systems and get to a comprehensive technical description in one model. This was probably over-optimistic. And in the meantime, my vision has changed, not only mine. There is a consensus with people from other organizations, including European Commission. That is, the idea would be to federate models. When I say federate, it sounds political. It is political. Federating models. In order to run a good federation, I think US has gained lots of experience. You need a constitution. No. You need some statute laws. You need, etc. And it's a bit the same. That is, let's use the strengths of the different models and make sure that they complete each other and do not excessively overlap. And let's make sure that the coupling is not too tight, so you can evolve one model without disturbing the others. So here, basically, the model Zoo that we're currently looking at and consider maybe, well, that could be the future Arch. The model Zoo consists in, well, RailTopoModel providing the skeleton because it handles the topological concepts very well. Then for signaling, the ULinks project has a very advanced model dealing both with the parts to be purchased and also with the functions. So kind of functional modeling there. For timetabling, there is an association called RailML.org that has been spreading timetabling exchange formats for a long time now. And this is also some kind of de facto standard. We have IFC, of course, for the whole civil works and civil construction parts. And of course, a fair share of our assets are civil construction. And currently we are cooperating with BuildingSMART International, who is a curator of IFC, in order to get also the railway construction parts inside. And well, the dictionary was missing. And this is where I said, and a couple of colleagues from the French National Railways, well, there is an initiative in UAC side. We imagined that we could set up such a dictionary in an efficient way. And somehow it used to be the traditional duty of UIC to publish a dictionary. The exception, the difference with what we had until now, that is RailLexic, it's not about translation. The first thing is what we need is really a real monolingual dictionary. Well, for historic reasons, especially because the initiative has been taken by the Chinese Railways BIM Association, the dictionary will be bilingual from scratch. That is English and Chinese.
Huh.
It is a bit of a revolution because imagine that the international monetary system would no longer rest on the US dollar like it does now, or on the pound sterling, that was the case before, but rest on two currencies at the same time, like US dollar and Chinese yuan. And this is exactly what we're trying to introduce for railway terms, having two currencies and rigorously equivalent and exchangeable. So this is also part of the the slight challenges. But this is really interesting. I mean, this it puts some salt in our soup, if I may say so.
I don't know if I've heard that metaphor before, but I think I understand. I mean, definitely being able to support more than one language is helpful. You know, if you want to introduce additional languages at any point, having that capability built in from the beginning, even if it's just two. The jump from 1 to 2 is a lot harder than the jump from 2 to another.
Starting with 2. Which is even worse.
Well, right.
But I think it's it's also the history of UIC is it is a worldwide organization. It is not something that is dominated neither by the French, nor by the British, nor by the German, nor by anybody else. And I think symbolically it's very strong if you start from scratch with a double currency, two languages. Yeah. And by the way, for that purpose, we absolutely need the so-called Lemon ontology prepared by the Worldwide Consortium that allows you to handle two different languages without slipping. So this is a first case of using an ontology in my case, and one of the reasons I got all of a sudden quite interested in these well-established technologies.
Yeah, okay.
Also, the interesting thing is ontologies are now the descending slope of the Gartner hype curve. And sure. This is good because people, maybe the expectations were too high at some point. Now people cool down a bit and we can talk rationally about how to use this stuff because the hype is over, fortunately.
Yeah, right. That's definitely true. You don't see, semantic web for dummies books being published anymore, like they were, 10 years ago. But yeah, it's interesting that you say that. What would have been different if you had tried to do this initiative 10 years ago, back when everybody was, trying to do their semantic web startups or whatever it was?
Yeah, difficult to figure because 10 years ago I was busy with railway regulations.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, and this was my first opportunity to visit the US ever.
Oh, okay.
Because at the time I was working with the European Rail Agency, and we set up a cooperation with the Federal Railroad Administration in the US, who is in charge of such kind of questions. So that was also quite interesting. So I was very, very far from that kind of problems and missed, in fact, this enthusiastic wave concerning ontologies at the time.
Right.
Just discovered now. In fact, we had one project running 2 years ago, financed by the European Commission, about creating railway passenger travel ontologies for the purpose of facilitating the creation of efficient small applications. By the way, there are good examples already. Maybe if you Google Rome to Rio, Rome like the capital, and Rio like Rio de Janeiro, the other capital. Rome to Rio is one of, I think, the first websites using ontologies to provide comprehensive travel information, no matter where you travel and with by which means.
Yeah.
And yes, have a look, because when you see that, it's quite convincing. If you have to explain how to do that without ontologies, it becomes very hard.
Yeah, I mean, well, can you do this kind of thing with Google Maps? Having the whole transport system built in? Do you know?
Well, I'm not aware of Google Maps using or not ontologies. Is that your question?
No, I just mean in terms of the final product, which is basically, getting precise directions from one place to another anywhere in the world.
Yes, usually it rests on graph analysis and graph optimization. But the point is that the data are published in very different ways for different means of transport. So that graph analysis is not easily done without ontologies, if it doesn't rest on ontologies.
I see.
But so far, UNC, which is more, I would say, standardization body, did not do a lot in that direction. Still, we cooperated in one European project called NetRail, where we developed, with the help of a Romanian development company, we developed an application that is able to cross very, very different data on the fly. Not yet using ontologies, but it's close to it. There is a OpenStreetMap, you know it, of course, and OpenStreetMap has a very well documented railway network description, quite up to date. So we don't need to set it up; it's done. Oh. And on the other hand, we have a European register of infrastructure that initially was essentially a conformity register for describing each single piece of track segment or line segment in Europe, 230,000 kilometers of tracks there. And the problem was how to represent those tracks on the map. And we managed, with the help of our Romanian consultant, to cross the two databases on the fly. So if you click on the static textual information, if you want to locate the track section with all its properties, you get with an astonishing accuracy its representation on a map. So that works well. It was not yet resting on ontologies, but it was, I would say, a starter. We'll try to further push in this development, because indeed having the possibility to set up an atlas, but not setting up the geographical part, that is cooperating with us, is a good idea. If we had to do everything by ourselves, well, we did it in the past, from 1998 to 2009, and 10 years later people gave up because they said, well, maintaining all these data is just too tedious, too costly. We stop. We no longer cooperate. Now the magic of OpenStreetMap, it's a bit like the magic of Wikipedia. It is sometimes possible to refresh and to keep up to date a huge body of knowledge without having to spend lots of apparent money from one single source. So it's extremely powerful. And we basically intend to do the same thing with the semantics, because here I enter a bit in the subject itself. That is, You know how standardization bodies work. Usually it's a closed circle of limit closed circle of experts, and then they set up something, and then the experts group gets more or less disbanded. People change duties, etc. And maintaining standards is creating standards. Typically, it takes 3 years, 5 years, costs $3 to $10 million. And then 3 years later, you have to do an update. It's all tedious, all again. And by the way, what these guys mean, etc. So it's not a very it's not a very satisfactory way of working for the people in the working group, and also for the outside world. It's often too slow, especially in rapidly evolving technologies like currently signaling in the railway domain that is rapidly evolving. So something has bound to be done there if you want to keep a sufficient pace. Keep the pace with the technology evolution, and make sure that people do not get mobilized and demobilized just too frequently. Kind of stop and go way of doing things. And the basic idea behind is also something that can be done inside MediaWiki. The basic idea. Currently, look at Wikipedia. You have two main tabs on the left. It's an article and it's a discussion.
Right.
Very good. You can do an encyclopedia like that. Now, if you want to make a standard, well, first thing, in a standard, you have two sections. You have the normative section and you have the informative section. The normative section, of course, you want to rule it or to do controlled releases. And by the way, there are extensions of MediaWiki to do that. And the informative section, well, it is about essentially, well, how should you use the standard, how useful it is, and presenting use cases, illustration, ways to put it to work, etc., etc. Well, basically, the guys who contributed to the standard should be, in my opinion, absolutely free to update the informative part because they know what they're talking about. And if I stop harassing them with controlled releases and say, okay, you have the editing rights, do what you think. When you gain more experience, write your new experience, write it down. Well, these guys anyway cherish their standard as if it were their own child. And if you say, okay, you have full freedom to edit the informative parts in the future, to promote your standard, increase its acceptance, make it more better understood, I think these guys will definitely be happy to contribute and not ask for money all the time. So this is one thing. So we already get one additional tab. And then discussion, well, very simple. The discussion page in Wikipedia is open, and there should be an open discussion page also for standards where users, at least if they register, not just an IP, sorry, users would be able to say, oh, I've used this standard, I've faced this difficulty, this ambiguity there, or this could be extended that way, etc. Of course, you have to moderate that. It's not a simple task, but at least the discussion page as it stands is usable for such purpose. And then, of course, you have the work group itself. Their discussions go on that are not necessarily public. Very often, when you develop a standard, it's just human. People come from different companies, represent interests of their companies, their projects, fight each other, and then you find to some kind of consensus. And the purpose of standardization body is to create a consensus. Of course, these discussions, you need to have them, trace them. You need to have a record somewhere, and otherwise you are not going to understand 3 years later why a decision was made at some point. But then at least that discussion that leads to the evolution of the normative content should be stored somewhere and maybe not made public. Otherwise, people will cease to cooperate. So here we end up with 4 tabs instead of 2, and of course all the history stuff on the right as we currently have. So this is definitely extensions. These are definitely extensions to MediaWiki. That can be considered, by the way, totally independently from semantic extensions, and also not touching the core of MediaWiki, because if we start to fumble into the core, then we'll have huge problems to keep the extensions alive. if the core changes. So this would be one of the work streams that I would like to promote in the coming months and years with UIC and others. Because the fantastic thing with MediaWiki is being able to provide a cooperation tool across companies, not just inside. If it's just inside one company, maybe we can buy some solution from the market. Why not? People do it. Or use MediaWiki, of course, like the NASA in the US and a couple of others. But having a collaboration tool that can span several companies is definitely something very attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, so I may be missing something, but when talking about Semantic MediaWiki, you, of course, can use Semantic MediaWiki to make use of an ontology, but to just describe an ontology, you don't need, Semantic MediaWiki or Cargo or whatever else. If it's just textual description. So what is it that you would use Semantic MediaWiki for?
Because I don't want to have a dry ontology on one hand and a flourishing encyclopedia on the other hand and have the two out of sync. This is a big no-no from my side. As simple as that.
Okay, so I'm still confused. I mean, the dictionary is just a set of, well, not just, but it's a big set of terms and their definitions and corresponding terms of different languages, potentially that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then ontology is a set of classes and all of that stuff. How do those two, and of course, I guess ontologies can make use of dictionary terms, but how?
Okay.
Where I still don't understand where SMW fits into this.
I see where the problem lies. Well, we need a dictionary, first thing. Second, I need an ontology to set up a multilingual dictionary where I'm able to relate a lexical term with a concept depending on the context. And if I want the dictionary to be self-supporting, I must have the concept defined in one page, the lexical terms possibly in other pages, and the relation between them illustrated by a third page, which would describe the concept. Yeah. So the equivalence is more or less a standard one. That is basically when you have a page in MediaWiki, in the context of Semantic MediaWiki, you can consider that the page will embody, for instance, a concept, a property, or a class. So that would be the elementary equivalence. And then, to be very concrete, one of the interesting subjects that we have is we have a system for performing functions. So we have a functional description, and we have a system, a kind of product breakdown structure. How do you map the objects to the functions? I mean, the components to the functions is one difficulty. And for instance, a simple piece of rail has, at least, I guess, 5 functions in Europe and elsewhere. Piece of rail will carry rolling stock, one function. A piece of rail will also guide rolling stock. It's another function. It's other part of the rail that will do the guiding stuff. Then a piece of rail will also carry the traction current under electrified lines, because the current goes through a circuit, starting with a power supply substation over the overhead contact line, through the locomotive, through the rails, and back to the earth. So here you can use quite nice currents, lots of amps. Then a rail also carries detection currents for track circuits, for detecting the presence of a piece of rolling stock of a given track section. So this is a fifth. And then, in order not to harm the public, the workers, etc., you have to earth, bonds, ground, whatever metallic component you have to make sure that induced currents will not raise the voltage so high that you will get an electric shock. So the same piece of rail will not only conduce current for traction purpose, but also ensure the equipotential. So how far away? 6 functions already just for a stupid, simple piece of rail. Now, doing that in a more systematic way in order to be able to create the digital twin of the railway system definitely requires ontologies, because what we would do here is to say, for instance, to create a vocabulary saying a component carries out a function. Carries out,
right.
being the piece of vocabulary, the property, the ontological property, linking a piece of component as a subject to a function as a predicate. So this is where we have, of course, to set up something, because a component carries out a function is, well, carries out is such generic, it's not very expressive. Then if you want to be more specific, you end up with a vocabulary that's too extended. People are likely not to pick the right one. So it's the usual problem in ontology design. But this is a typical thing that I would like to see in the dictionary. When we say we have a track circuit, we define the track circuit. It's something composed of 2 rails, an emitter, receiver, and the track circuits performs a function which is the detection of vehicles that are running over a piece of track, localization of vehicles. And of course, you will have alternatives to track circuits. You can navigate. What else does localization of trains? Then you take the reverse property and say, axle counters do that too. So my catalog is bigger. And I get these cross-references in a much more rational way than just resting on people thinking, okay, I'm creating an article on track circuits, and maybe I should say, by the way, look also axle counters, because axle counters do something similar. And by the way, look up GPS, because GPS may also locate rolling stock, but not with the same safety level, etc., etc. So this would all rest on human judgment, on expert judgment. What I propose is to say, well, whenever we identify a critical function like train detection or broken rail detection, we define it as a function, a special subclass. In the ontology, we create a page to illustrate it, and then we use the property performs to say what kind of objects are going to perform that safety critical function. And I have a full, consistent dictionary that doesn't rest on human judgment to be complete. And completeness, consistency is one thing that I want to be implemented there, because we cannot afford to have a mess of a dictionary, and not even a limited set of errors that will correct in the next edition. I want to be able to prove that my dictionary is self-consistent and complete.
Yeah. It all makes sense. It's interesting. My understanding is you're planning to use to make it a true to make Ontorail a true semantic web site using RDF and Sparkle and all of that. Having Semantic MediaWiki store its data to an RDF triple store. Is that correct?
Yes. And this is also one of the reasons I will I will always be grateful to Mr. Mathieu Perrin to have opened me that possibility of using Semantic MediaWiki. Well, the idea is you have the MediaWiki environment that is good for human readers, and you have at the same time the exact equivalent is an RDF file to be used for algorithm by machines. Yeah. And this is, I think, one of the powerful things, also for another reason. As I said before, I started doing some programming in the 70s using Fortran. At the time, it was very simple. You were an expert, you had a problem, but since you were trained as an engineer in using Fortran, you would create a piece of code to solve your problem. Right. So basically 2 layers. Then came the professionalization of coders. So the engineer had to write a specification to explain his problem. And the coder would set up some kind of algorithm and some kind of spaghetti code or structured programming, because we started to do that in the early 70s. And then you had an additional layer. And then came modeling, UML modeling, you had an additional layer. And then came ontologies, and people started to say, well, between the documentation and the model, you should insert an ontology. And this is, by the way, what I'm doing now. Now we are happy to insert all of those layers, implying more people with interesting knowledge, more consultants. We add the overhead tends to increase a bit. Essentially to get more and more minimal transforms from one layer to another one. An ontology, well built, is close to knowledge as you would write it on paper. Then if you translate it into a UML model, well, currently you will find lots of publications for extracting ontologies from UML. What I'm interested in is just the reverse maneuver, that is going from the ontology to UML. And I think that could be possible, also considering that some ontology vocabularies like OL are very expressive, and usually more expressive than UML class diagrams the way I currently use. For instance, characteristically, when people or starters, I would say beginners, would set up a class diagram, they will first not define their classes in some kind of dictionary. Because if they say signal, they take it for granted everybody will understand what a signal is, which is not the case. And then they will put relationships and always forget about role names. Even yesterday and day before yesterday, I had to insist, sorry guys, I don't accept an association in a class diagram if you don't put a bloody role name that tells me what it does. Otherwise, I can associate hens with rabbits, and I will not be surprised not to get any chicken. Huh? So that kind of things, and of course, and by the way, you of course, when people do class diagrams, they will put cardinalities. Oh, this is commonplace. We did that also at RDBMS times. And everybody forgets about constraints because, OCL, well, it's not well known, it's not such well implemented in the tool set, etc. And they forget about OCL. On the other hand, constraints are a commonplace in all ontologies, vocabularies. So I think indeed the step from ontology, which is the last step that is really for domain experts to do, to the first step by really IT experts, that is the class diagrams, getting close to the software design. I mean, this step is a critical one. From my current experience right now, it is the most difficult one, because all of a sudden you change the world somehow. You change a language radically. And I dream of having this step rationalized as far as I can, and possibly even automated by a model transformation. That is, adding to the ontology, that is describing domain knowledge, a few indications, a few stereotypes, etc., to tell what I would like to have on the IT implementation side for it to work properly. And this idea of model transformation has been pushed quite far by by academia, but is not so fashionable for the time being in the industry domain. And having a proper ontology for railway terms hopefully will help us to do the modeling in a more rational way than what we are currently doing.
Yeah. That makes sense. I realize I don't know much about OWL or UML, the two things you described in terms of the differences between them and which one has more flexibility or constraints or whatever it is. What you're saying makes sense. Great. I mean, I think this will lot of this ontology stuff will, as we say in the U.S., will sail over the heads of most of the people listening. Although some people certainly understand it, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Is there any kind of time frame for this stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. I will retire in 3 years' time. And I want to finish off the bloody stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty
this
hard
is
deadline.
The very this is a very subjective way of imagining a time frame. Fortunately, this very subjective opinion coincides with a couple of projects running, or proposed rather. First, the Ontorail project, because currently it is a prototype stage, feasibility, and trying to get the funds. And this, it's not by chance. I've programmed it over 3 years, in which I hope that we'll even get to the functional description of the railway system. Yeah. But my initiative, if I may say so, is not the main one. I'm only a very small fish in the pond here. There is a railway-related research initiative, a joint venture, so to say, joint undertaking, as it is called in European lawmaking, that joins many European railways and industries like Thales and Alcatel and etc., Bombardier. And funded by European Commission with hefty funding.
Oh, wow.
And these guys have noticed, well, we have done lots of research. We have difficulties to assemble our bits and pieces of research through different systems because we don't have a common data model. And this is where, after discussion with the other initiatives, RailTopoModel, ULinks, RailML, IFC Foundation class, etc., they came to the consensus with UIC, with all the previously named bodies, that federation models would make sense. And then that these federated models are only going to work if they share a common language, that is, a common data dictionary. Not necessarily an ontology, but I have other reasons to push towards an ontology. It's the model transformation approach, okay? And so quite naturally, I proposed Ontorail to be the candidate here. And this project just mentioned, which is called the CDM, now Links for Rail, I think. This project is going to start, if everything goes well, if it gets the nod, from late September this year over typically a 3 years period.
Yeah.
So this all coincides well, and also coincides with a political agenda behind, because there is huge pressure to make European railways more effective. Geographically, we are not in such good conditions as, say, Japan for passenger transport, where they are running basically a super fast and efficient massive rapid transit from north to south. And we are not also in the very favorable condition of Russia or the US concerning freight transport. In US, basically, you transport freight over a very long distance through quite desertic areas and from East Coast to West Coast or towards the Great Lakes. So, I mean, it's an ideal geography for doing efficient freight. The European guys are not less efficient, but unfortunately geography is quite different and not so favorable to railways. So we have to get more efficient by other means. And the other means are, among other things, automatic train operation, to reduce the cost of operating and improve also the recovery from disturbed situations, because our system is a bit saturated, so disturbances are quite often happening. And the other aspect is building information modeling, because construction, maintenance, reconstruction is a process that is a bit too costly right now. As the guys from Civil Works said, we are the last guys who start constructing with having 80% of the drawings available, but not the rest of the 20%, because we will see once it's installed or in the course of installation. And this is how you create additional costs and additional delays. So these are the two big economic drivers. And BIM is already a legal requirement for new projects in Spain from 2019. That is, this year. Wow.
Yeah.
And 2020 in Germany. So this is a very, very close. I mean, the need is already there, law is already there, and the tools are still lagging a bit. But we are trying to accelerate with BuildingSMART International especially. And then the other aspect is, automatic train operation, where the deadlines are a bit more far away because the safety proofing of the whole system, the safety certification, I mean, eliminating drivers, if I may say so, is really a big step. And safety certification is going to take some time. Let's be quite realistic here. It will take as much time probably as is needed to reconstruct Notre-Dame de Paris after the fire.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah. We've covered a lot of stuff. Obviously relating to ontologies and all the logistical elements, I guess. Switching topics. Just as a final thing for this podcast. You are running the next SMWCon Semantic MediaWiki Conference, which is, I believe, going to be September 25th to 27th. That's about 3 months from now in Paris. Yeah, I mean, how's the planning for that going? I don't know if you have any time to deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I would like to. At least I got good support from colleagues I met at the previous conference, the Enterprise MediaWiki Conference in Daly City in April. So from that point of view, I don't feel alone. It's just time is indeed running. The setup of the conference will be very close to what we had in Daly City because, honestly, I was personally quite pleased by the conference setup. It was very lively, interactive, and opened to me absolutely no horizons. And okay, I just want to be not worse. Definitely not. So this is by itself already quite a bit of a challenge. So this one aspect. The other aspect is that in the first day, we'll probably insist a bit more on the business case. Because maybe this is what is missing right now. Even for building information modeling, which is quite industrial an endeavor, I had a discussion yesterday morning with a project manager on the BuildingSMART side, and we are all sharing the same analysis. The support for that kind of project in management and upper management is poor. When it comes to buying new computers, including laptops for all sorts of usage, not always very professional ones, money is flowing and it gets poured into Microsoft and the others, etc., absolutely no problem. And then you are asking a couple of million euro or dollars just to set up this building information modeling that is supposed to help you spare 5-10% maybe of your costs for every construction and maintenance site. And then somehow, all of a sudden, 2 million become a big amount. So here we are struggling at convincing people that these soft engineering is not, sorry to say, intellectual masturbation. It is really about doing good business and efficient business. Sure. We have the problem with BIM. Of course, we also have the problem with ontologies and Semantic MediaWiki because it sounds just a bit too esoteric to people. Fortunately, when I say, hey, look at Wikipedia, yes, that rings a bell, and people start to see the light. Now, so the purpose is, and that's a slight difference with Daly City maybe, I will definitely, since UIC is hosting that conference, I will definitely reserve a couple of slots to use cases in the railway domain, because I would really like to have the railway community embracing, or at least talking, to the MediaWiki community and to the semantic or cargo whatever MediaWiki community, because I think we have a useful business that we could do to get together here. So definitely, yes, there will be some talks about use cases. One example is ontologies for describing the infrastructure, an initiative by the Netherlands, the infrastructure manager in the Netherlands, ProRail. They have set up and published a ontology that is in the works. If you Google OTL Spoor, that is OTL Spoor, SPOOR, sorry, which means OTL ontology, I don't know why exactly, and Spoor like infrastructure or tracks in Dutch. You will see something that looks like a Protégé online with about 450 classes, concepts exposed and interrelated. So this is a quite interesting initiative. They started, of course, before I myself was interested in ontologies. And to me, it's a source of inspiration, and I hope in the future we'll jump on the bandwagon and be pleased to generalize what they propose and for everybody to benefit from. So this is one of the examples. The other one is this European project I mentioned about creating an ontology for passenger transport. So here there are definitely advantages in terms of development, easy development of useful applications for passengers and ticketing systems, etc. So this is another example. And this would, I think, I hope, help people converge, at least for some time, because that will mean increased interest on the semantic website. We may have noticed that the activity has been not so great these last 2 years. So we have to, I think, give it a kick. And quantitatively, simply if you look at the number of publications and updates on Git. And on the other hand, we need also to accelerate on our side and to use the right tools right from the beginning, because I'm fed up. Sorry to say it that way, but I'm fed up to see engineers creating dictionaries using Excel sheets.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I know it's indecent. It's gross. I should not say that. But sorry, this is reality. People use Excel sheets to put terms and definitions, etc. And then, my gosh, I mean, even a simple RDBMS would have been better. And RDBMS has been around for decades now. But no,
sure.
Tables. Okay, it's simply a waste of time. And some people, including non-geeks, are starting to say, can we have maybe better tools for handling our concepts? Well, the door is open to MediaWiki.
Yeah, that's true. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, there's all sorts of ways that a semantic MediaWiki, I would call it enterprise MediaWiki, can be used. But a big one is these kinds of inter-organizational standards and knowledge sets and stuff, where there really is, as you noted, there really is no alternative. I mean, no good alternative to it.
Well, here I'm being very pragmatic. I see that some things work, and I'm looking for alternatives, and I don't see any.
Yeah.
So what shall I do?
Right.
Be pragmatic, huh?
But it'll be great. There's always with these conferences, it's always a combination of trying to market the software to outsiders, and then of course technical discussions among people who are already users. But I'm definitely glad to hear that you want to do some marketing as well to the railway community and others. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, we'll start with I would say the use cases and end up with very technical discussions. So participants are sure to find something that will be startling for them or raise interest. And once again, to me, the measure of success is, can we be as successful as in April in Daly City? Because once again, that was one of the great events I attended in my life.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Okay. Great. Well,
Yeah, really.
yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess clearly the fact that that inspired you to run your own event is a sign that you enjoyed it. But yeah, that's great.
Sorry. It is not my own event.
All
I
right.
do not own that event. I
Okay.
host it.
Okay.
And I organize it with the whole of the community because I'm absolutely a newbie, here. And of course, I want to help remobilizing the community, providing additional incentives, but I'm not going to steer the community in some precise direction. As I said, I would only really like the railway community and the MediaWiki community starting to cooperate on whatever subject. For me, it would be, of course, this ontology stuff, Ontorail, but it can also be other subjects, more conventional training material, applications, mobile applications too, because here MediaWiki has improved a lot with time. And here I'm open for any kind of, I would be glad to hear any other kind of initiative.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's the big benefit, of course, is hearing about all these different interesting usages and seeing what kind of overlaps there are. And yeah. Great. Well, I think that's a very good plug for the upcoming SMWCon. I guess I can say, I would recommend it even for people who don't use Semantic MediaWiki, but just use MediaWiki if they're using Cargo or anything else. I think there's still a lot of people can benefit. That's my
well,
view.
I think you will be a speaker at that conference. You will have an opportunity also to present that view. No problem.
Oh, great! Yeah. I'm planning to attend. It's not 100%, but I definitely that's definitely the plan at the moment. So there'll be a link to that and a link to a lot of these other things that you've mentioned on the page for this episode on the podcast site. So I encourage everyone to register. It's coming up in just about 3 months, and it's going to be in Paris. It'll be our first ever conference in Paris, so that's really exciting. Yeah. Sorry. Were you going to say something?
No, sorry. No.
Oh, okay.
I think we are more or less about wrapping up here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of stuff clearly, and I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Airy. It was great talking to you.
Well, and thanks to you, because you were my first contact on the side of the MediaWiki community. And to me, as I said, it was a really refreshing encounter at a very late stage of my career, but you helped me to stay a bit young. So really, that's quite appreciated. I think this is all going to be very useful and comes just at the right time with mature tooling, mature concepts, mature applications. So I think we should all reap the benefits of it.
That's great. And it's a great way to end your career, I would say. I mean, if you can get this going off the ground in the next few years, it's going to be pretty amazing, I think.
Yeah, I hope that will be useful.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, yeah. Thanks again, and I'll see you in Paris. But yeah, thank you.
Yes, hopefully, yes. See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye. And this has been another episode of Between the Brackets. I want to again thank my guest, Airy Magnien of the UIC and now of SMWCon. Thank you to all of you for listening, and I'll see you next time.